Today on Notsam Wrestling, it's time to address the question with Roman Reigns back. Is Jey Uso the next Tribal Cheif? Is Jey Uso turning heel? Speaking of heel turns, we get the Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes tension teased. Once again, Andrade shows up in AEW. Javon Evans is back on SmackDown. What is going on? This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. It has been a busy week. A lot to talk about, as always. Lots of people giving lots of takes across lots of issues. And we here at Notsam Wrestling, meaning me here at Notsam Wrestling, I suppose I just happen to be one of them. I did get to see The Smashing Machine over the weekend. I got to check out that movie on Wednesday. And I'll tell you what it's doing. I'll tell you what it's going to do. Will it get everybody saying, the big conversation going in, of course, is The Rock's physical transformation, which is amazing because you don't hear too often like, oh, you got to see this. The Rock got bigger, but it's as big, maybe as big as The Rock has ever been. I would love to compare this and like peak Pain and Gain era Rock, but like he put on 30 pounds from what was already on his frame coming off of WrestleMania 40 to portray Mark Kerr in The Smashing Machine. And it really is, it's an amazing role, not just because the physical transformations, but because as you watch, you lose Dwayne Johnson. You lose The Rock too. It's not sort of a, here's The Rock and it's an action movie or it's a fighting movie. He's going to knock heads and we see him again. No. This is Mark Kerr. This is a true story. This is based on a documentary. It's a fascinating story, and just as much happens in the ring as outside the ring. And really, to me, that's where the movie shines, is seeing Mark Kerr as portrayed by Dwayne Johnson and going through what he was going through at home, going through opioid addiction, going through a tumultuous, to say the least, relationship, with his girlfriend, while at the same time having these friendships that saved his life. I think that is where the real transformation comes in, and that's where we see The Rock do some for real acting. And I don't know what Oscar season is going to look like. I don't think that's what you tune into Notsam Wrestling to hear about, but I will tell you this. The next time that conversation comes up, that has come up so many times before, that conversation being who is the best wrestler turned actor. For the last couple years, the popular answer has been Dave Bautista. Dave Bautista, because people were not measuring by box office. It was just by ability and range. I think that now The Rock has re-entered that conversation, and that's going to have to be revisited because he really is amazing in this movie, as is the director, Benny Safdie, as a writer-director, as is Rock's co-star, Emily Blunt. There's a lot to talk about. I did a whole review of it over on the Not Sam YouTube channel. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the movie, wrestling aside, you can check that out once you're done with today's podcast, because we simply have too much wrestling to talk about. For example, going back to The Rock, going back to the Samoan Dynasty, going back to the Tribal Cheif, we got the return of Roman Reigns. So at the end of Monday Night Raw, on Monday, Roman Reigns returns. The main event is the Usos versus the Bronsons in a rematch from WrestlePalooza, only this time it is a tornado tag, which is convenient because they make the rules of the tornado tag no disqualification, and that means that if it's time for the Tribal Cheif to come home, he can do so without disrupting the result of the match. So, I guess he did disrupt it, but causing, I should say, the result of the match. So at the end of Raw, the Brons are stacking Jimmy and Jey Uso on top of one another. And I think the stacking in and of itself is very important to note. The stacking is a Roman Reigns strategy. The stacking is what Roman Reigns did at WrestleMania 37 in the match with Edge and Daniel Bryan. And the stacking, I think, was the thing. People forget, but going into WrestleMania 37, there was this real thought of like, okay, Roman Reigns had won the championship at SummerSlam. And this whole idea of the bloodline and the Tribal Cheif and this new version of Roman Reigns with the wise man Paul Heyman was just starting to take shape. And there was this thought of, well, you could have the happy ending and have Daniel Bryan be put into this match so that Edge can pin Daniel Bryan and become the champion. That was a real thought going into this because people didn't realize what we had on our hands with this version of Roman Reigns. And instead, Roman made history and stacked these two Hall of Famers slash future Hall of Famers on top of one another. And to see that stack happen again on Monday Night Raw, especially with Paul Heyman at ringside, I said, no, this cannot stand. So Roman Reigns did the thing that Roman Reigns, okay, so how many times this year he started back, right? He was back for Netflix Raw, and he was in the Royal Rumble and all that. And then after the Royal Rumble, he disappeared. So that, boom, 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 the music hitting, the first return was Raw at Madison Square Garden. And that led to WrestleMania, and that got us to the night after WrestleMania. Then there was, then there was another return before SummerSlam. And then he went away after after Clash in Paris. Although, was he gone? So it's either 3 or 4 times that Roman Reigns has returned this way this year alone. And I'm really hopeful that we get long-term Roman Reigns right now. I think there are a lot of people disappearing to go do movies. I think that the fact that you have Brock Lesnar coming in for, WrestlePalooza and then leaving for God knows how long. You have John Cena on his retirement tour, and he's been one of the more consistent main event level guys in the WWE, but even John Cena can't make it to every television. We have a numbered appearances left of John Cena. John Cena is going to get killed at WrestlePalooza, and then we don't see him again until the next pay-per-view Crown Jewel. You have, Drew McIntyre, who just got a new movie. You have Cody Rhodes, who was gone for a month filming Street Fighter. And it's all good news. It's all good that these WWE superstars are also in Hollywood at the same time. But you need that consistency in order to satiate the WWE audience. We're used to having that consistency of having those big stars there all the time. And if we buy a ticket to a show, or if we're planning on, watching a PLE, that we know that the big stars are going to be there. I'm very hopeful that Roman Reigns is back for a considerable amount of time right now. The amount of time that we have not seen him this year, I think it would be fair if we got him for a stretch. I mean, the idea of getting Roman Reigns from now until WrestleMania, I think would do a world of good for WWE. I think there is only so much start and stop that human beings can take. And Roman does bring that extra aura, that extra power. And there's only so much you can do, contracts being contracts. But, and I'm sure if WWE could get Roman Reigns on television every single week, he'd be on television every single week. That's not the deal that Roman signed, and God bless him for it. But I'm very hopeful, and we never know what those dates look like. But the fact that he's back now on the poster for Crown Jewel, I've got to believe he's going to be a part of Survivor Series. I've got to believe, because the idea that he's just there to set up a storyline and then the story moves on without him. We need Roman involved in these stories. So here's what I've got going into this one, right? Roman survives everybody again, chases the Vision, beats the Vision down, chases him out of the ring. Now he's in the ring with Jimmy and Jey Uso. He puts Jimmy on the pay no mind list, grabs Jey by the face, embraces him. I don't know if he actually grabbed him by the face, but that's how it is in my mind's eye. But he's face to face with him, maybe hands on his shoulders, and saying, it's all you. This is all yours. F all of them. This is all about you. Singular. Saying you are the guy. This is all about you. It's almost like he gave him this bit of advice at Crown Jewel. And I'm sorry, at Clash in Paris. He gave him this bit of advice at Clash in Paris. And the fact that Jimmy lived up to it, the fact that Jey lived up to it, the fact that Jey has moved forward with an energy of like, yeah, this was Roman's advice and I'm following it. Because when Roman gave the advice, it was, hey man, that's just what I would do. You do what you think is right. That's just what I would do. And Jey said, okay, well, that is what I'm going to do. And Jey's been living by that. Roman has been observing that. Now Roman is ready to say, it's all yours. And ignoring Jimmy. And Jimmy has to look on. And Jimmy is in this position where he's kind of looking like, I don't really know where I stand in this thing. But I also know that I don't have a ton of leverage in this moment. That every sort of aside that I had with Jey saying, chill out, chill out, chill out. It doesn't really work if Roman Reigns is around and he's on Jey's side. Because you're either going to roll with whatever Roman and Jey say or you're going to get left behind. And Jimmy knows that. And you go, well, why was Roman out there in the first place? I mean, think about it. Think about it. Jimmy and Jey were stacked on top of each other. It looked like Jimmy and Jey were going to lose this tag team match again to the Bronsons. Jimmy and Jey had lost to the Bronsons previously. However, before that, Jey and Roman had beat the Bronsons at SummerSlam with Jey getting the pin. So if Jey and Roman can beat Bronson and Bronson, and Jimmy and Jey can't beat Bronson and Bronson, what's the disconnect? Who's left behind? It's Jimmy. That, to me, is the direct implication. And I think that what you're looking at here is, okay, Roman sees it as, in this specific instance, Jimmy was the fault that this match wasn't going to get won. But also in the bigger picture of it all, Jimmy is the one pushing to help LA Knight. Jimmy is the one pushing to bring the roster up and to help your friend over here and help your friend over there. And it's Jey who's finally having it click in that I've tasted the World Heavyweight Championship. That's the air that I want to breathe. And in order to do that, we are only caring about our family. It's not a philosophy that Jimmy has, but Jimmy has never worn singles gold. Jimmy has never been the World Heavyweight Champion. So why would Jey take the advice of Jimmy? What we're getting is this idea that Jey has been, well, he's been corrupted by a run with the World Championship. He's been corrupted by the blessing of the Tribal Cheif. And Jimmy sees this as Jey being corrupted. But he's being left out because all that power is circulating around Jey right now. I think that it's all very compelling. I think that the idea of, from a long-term perspective, if the bloodline was always a story about Jey Uso, which it was said many, many times, then wouldn't it make sense if it ended with Jey Uso as the new Roman, not as the top guy, as the new Roman Reigns? It would turn Jey into something completely different because Jey was the opposite of Roman Reigns. Jey had humility. Jey had an appreciation for the people around him. Jey had this thought that he was just one piece of a larger puzzle, whereas Roman considered himself to be the puzzle master and all the puzzle pieces to be his property and to do with as he saw fit. A completely different philosophy from Jey, which now it appears that Jey is willing to entertain because clearly Roman was able to take this World Heavyweight title thing in the direction that Jey wants to take it, right? So when you're looking at turning Jey into something completely different, Jey wants to now be the leader of the family. That's the position that Roman is putting Jey in, to be the leader of the family. And you phrase it that way because you go, I'm the leader and I'm doing it this way because I'm going to benefit the whole family. And you portray yourself in a benevolent way, as a benevolent dictator, but in reality, you are a selfish person. You're selfish because you are trying to get as much of the rewards, as much of the gold, as much of the money, as much of the everything, and only give it to your family, not give it to anybody else associated with the WWE or associated with the industry. You are not looking to make the industry better for generations. You're only looking to make the industry better for generations of your family. And you are so convinced of your greatness, and the results, and in the case of Roman Reigns, are there to portray your greatness so much that you won't accept anybody's input unless it's, yes, sir, what else can I do for you, sir? Because you know best, and results prove that you know best, which means that anybody who steps forward, even if they're in your family, and says, Tribal Cheif, I don't think this is the way to do it. This is the way we need to be doing it. Well, that person ends up with the people outside of your family in the industry. That person ends up as a victim to the selfishness that you don't even portray as selfishness. You portray it as providing for your family. It ends up being a caste system. The penalty for disloyalty is excommunication. And once you're excommunicated, you don't benefit from any of the wealth. It will be as wealthy a time as we've ever had, but only a few may benefit from that wealth. And everybody else that works toward it, well, they'll be shut out. That's what Seth Rollins was fighting against at WrestleMania 40. That's what LA Knight was fighting against before that. That's what Drew McIntyre was fighting against at Clash at the Castle. That's what everybody that fought the Bloodline was fighting against. Not just so they could be champion, but so that the industry could be protected against this medieval-like caste system that Roman Reigns wanted to hold over the industry. Unless Jey does things differently. You know, at SummerSlam 2023, it was Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso, and Jimmy Uso betrayed Jey and cost him the match. When asked why, Jimmy explained exactly what's happening right now. See, in 2023, when Jimmy said, I did that because if you beat Roman, and you can beat Roman, you're going to end up like Roman. And I don't want to see that happen to you. I don't want to see what happened to Roman happen to you. And to be honest, I think I speak for a lot of us, when at the time, it felt a little weak. It felt like it came out of nowhere. It felt like, what do you mean? Why? Like, I thought you had turned, like it got muddled, and it felt muddled. But luckily for us, everything counts. And that all comes forward now. And I'm not saying that they did that in 2023 so that 2 years later we could, cash it in. But I am saying that it happened in 2023. So now here we are 2 years later, and we can execute on that. What if all of Jimmy's concerns were right? What if when Jimmy kicked Jey in the face and cost him the match with Roman Reigns, what if Jimmy really was protecting Jey because Jimmy was right? And this is what could happen to Jey Uso. I think there's a world where Jey follows in the footsteps of Roman Reigns. I think that there's a world where Jey turns heel. I think there's a world where Jey Uso takes his place as the Tribal Cheif. But what does that look like, and what happens to everybody around it? Are we going to redo the bloodline? Are we going to have Jimmy line up? Are we going to have Roman act as a wise man? That's possible, right? If Roman's not going to be wrestling as often, is Roman the wise man? Is Jey the Tribal Cheif? Is Jimmy the right-hand man? Solo Sikoa said, I'm looking for another piece of my puzzle. Does Solo Sikoa's family tree get wrapped into Jey Uso's bloodline? It's all possible. But what if it doesn't look like that? Are we really going to do that to one of WWE's legitimately most popular stars? And people will tell you, oh, well, Jey Uso has kind of hit the ceiling as far as good guys go. Oh, well, we've seen it all with Jey Uso. We have heard that so many times with Jey Uso. And somehow the support for Jey Uso gets bigger and bigger and bigger. While all this heel teasing is happening, he still has men, women, and children going nuts for him every time he comes out, every time he comes to the ring. Are we really going to do that to one of our most popular babyfaces legitimately in the WWE? Or is there a version of this story that turns and it makes Jey Uso an even bigger babyface? I think that this could be a story where Jey follows that road that was inevitable, where Jey follows that road that he was always destined to follow, to be that Tribal Cheif. Or this may not be an Icarus story. This could be the story of somebody who gets real close to the sun but then realizes it's time to turn around and go home. And maybe that means a heart-to-heart with Jimmy Uso. Maybe that means Sami Zayn stepping back into things and explaining to him what's going on. Maybe that means instead of looking at Cody's belt and realizing he's going to betray Cody, somebody talking to him. Maybe that means Rikishi talking to him. Maybe that means, who knows what that means. But maybe there's a version of this where what if Jey gets as close as you can to stepping over the line that you cannot turn back from, to stepping over that line that will change you forever, that line that Roman Reigns not only stepped over but created. And he doesn't step over the line. We get this close, and he doesn't. Ultimately, if the Usos are the Usos, if Jimmy and Jey Uso are the Usos, they could tag again, and they could become a bigger tag team than not only they've ever been, but than any tag team has ever been. If Jimmy and Jey Uso are back together as a tag team, and it's like this is what the act is, they're a full-time tag team, they had already gone further than just about any tag team ever had. They main evented WrestleMania. They were main eventing the house shows as a tag team. Like, this could be even bigger. This could be bigger than the tag team championship type of tag team. They could do that. Or this could just be a fresh coat on Jey's run as a true babyface. If Jey gets close, and I mean like really close, to being the Tribal Cheif to the point that we think it's going to happen, if he gets so close, if he just to cashing in on that look that he gave Cody Rhodes championship, to snapping on Jimmy Uso, but then right before he finally pulls that trigger, he realizes that he's headed down the wrong path. Right before it's too late, he realizes that was the wrong road to go down. You know, I don't see Roman Reigns becoming a heel again. I just don't see it. I don't think that he has executed on this babyface run. And he is still feuding with the Vision, and he still wants to be the man again at some point. I don't see Roman Reigns going back to being a heel. I don't see Roman Reigns becoming a wise man just yet. What if at the perfect time, when all these backs are against the wall, Jey has a choice to make, and he ultimately chooses to defy the advice of Roman Reigns? What if he realizes that helping somebody else who's outside of the family is for the greater good? And what if instead of just being a leader for the Anoa'i, Mayaviya, Samoan dynasty, he realizes he can be an industry leader. He realizes he can be a locker room leader. He realizes that he can do things that benefit his family, that benefit himself, but also benefit his locker room and benefit the industry. And what if he realizes that there are people that have been watching him since the Usos first came up, that there have been people in the wrestling industry who have watched this guy become the world heavyweight champion? If he realizes that, unlike Roman Reigns, Jey Uso is not a guy who was earmarked for success. Jey Uso was not a guy who was brought into the WWE with the assumption that he was going to main event WrestleMania, that he was going to be the world heavyweight champion, and that Jey Uso is inspiration, not just for fans, but for actual wrestlers in the industry that show, look, if you work hard and you put the time in and you make that connection with the audience that no one can take away, amazing things can happen. And that's who Jey Uso is. I think that if Jey Uso steps forward and defies Roman Reigns in this moment, and his choice ends up being right, that you could play this in a way that we all thought Jey was going to turn, and we all thought Jey was going to follow in the footsteps of Roman Reigns. But maybe Roman sees Jey do something that is not, he said, Jey, you go do this, and Jey does that. He doesn't do this, he does that. And when Roman sees Jey do that, and that ends up being correct, and Roman realizes that this would have been the wrong move, and Roman wanted this, But Jey did that instead, and that was the right move. Maybe, just maybe, because this is a different Roman Reigns. Roman actually recognizes that Jey not following his advice was the right move. Roman recognizes that Jey following his instinct was the right move, not following Roman's instinct was the right move. And that's the moment that Roman realizes that Jey is truly ready. Roman didn't have somebody with him telling him what to do all the time. The wise man was there to follow the orders of Roman Reigns. So if Roman is able to see Jey defy him and be right, and Roman is not a heel, which I don't think he will be, then you have this scenario where Roman can say, you are ready. Not only are you ready, you don't need me. You're the man. Go be the man. And I think that if Roman can do that, that Roman realizes that what makes Jey the guy is that Jey is now doing it on his own, and maybe Jey even knows stuff that Roman doesn't know. Then Roman can take a step back. Jey can get to that next level of babyfacedom. And then Roman can go take care of the other missions that he needs to take care of. Roman still needs revenge on Seth Rollins. Roman still needs revenge on CM Punk. And Roman Reigns needs to get his championship back from Cody Rhodes. He has expressed all three of those goals. And that's why the more I think about it, the more I go, no, we are not witnessing Jey becoming the next Tribal Cheif. We are not witnessing Jey becoming a heel. We are witnessing Jey look at this table full of temptations and get right to the table, close enough that he can smell it, but then realize, no, it's not for him, and do things the right way. And that's what makes him a babyface, and that's what makes Jimmy Uso ride there right along with him, and that's what makes Roman Reigns go, you go do your thing, I'm going to do my thing. And then you have Jey and Jimmy Uso over here succeeding. You have Sami Zayn over there succeeding. You have Roman Reigns over there succeeding. And they're not all constantly tied into each other. That, to me, is where right now, today, as I talk to you, I'd ultimately like to see this thing go. But then you also have Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa goes on SmackDown. And like I said, Solo goes on and said he's looking for one more piece to the puzzle. You know, Solo has been on SmackDown every week for the last 3-4 weeks, explaining, you know, how reestablishing his family tree. The MFTs are his family tree, and having them all one by one pledge their loyalty to Solo Sikoa. First week, it was Solo explaining what was going on. Second week, it was Solo bringing in Tonga Loa, and Tonga Loa saying, I love you, Solo, and Solo establishing who Tonga is. The next week, it was Solo bringing in JC Mateo, and Solo establishing who JC was, and JC saying, I love you, Solo. Then last week, it was Tala Tonga entering frame and rebuilding this group that we haven't seen since Sami Zayn took the United States Championship away from Solo Sikoa. And he said last week that there's one more. There's one more piece before this puzzle is complete. And of course, you know, names are going to be thrown around. Like I said, you could work this into the Jey Uso story. I don't think so. Could be another family member. Lance Anoa'i is a name that gets thrown around a lot. Zilla Fatu is a name that gets thrown around a lot. But I think it's more simple than that. I honestly think this is just simply the return of Tama Tonga. We haven't seen Tama Tonga in forever. Tama Tonga went away, and it became Solo and when it was Solo and Jacob, and then Solo and Jacob and JC, and then Tonga Loa came back when Jacob left. And then Tala Tonga showed up in their rivalry with Jacob Fatu. We haven't seen Tama Tonga in all of that. So I think Tama Tonga comes back to this. But either way, I really hope that the reason that they've been keeping Solo and his MFT group off television is for a full rebranding, reestablishing of who they are. I think Solo is an unbelievably underrated performer. I think Solo's great. I think Solo's ability to be convincing as an enforcer, to be convincing as a guy that could kill everybody, but then also be convincing as kind of a weaselly guy, and then also be hilarious on the entertainment side of things. Solo Sikoa has shown far more range than I think Solo gets any credit for whatsoever. I am hopeful that what we do here is kind of take Solo's group away from the bloodline. I hope when Solo comes back, he doesn't attack Jacob Fatu. I don't know. I think he probably will attack Jacob Fatu. I hope he does not attack Jacob Fatu. I hope he does not attack Sami Zayn. I hope they find completely new business. I want to see Jacob's MFTs and the Wyatt Six go at it, faction versus faction. I want Solo's group to exist independently of all this bloodline stuff. That's why I said a moment ago, Roman's over here, Jimmy and Jey are over here, Sami's over here. It's time to really showcase how successful this storyline has been for all the elements away from each other. Because I think the more Solo's group is associated with former members of the bloodline, be it Sami Zayn, be it Jacob, be it for whoever, they're going to get compared to the bloodline. And I think that is why people are critical of the MFT group, because the bloodline is arguably in the conversation, and I would probably say they are, for greatest faction of all time. People will say DX, people will say the NWO, a lot of people will say the Four Horsemen. But I think that there's a conversation to be had when talking about the greatest faction of all time. And I think that the bloodline is in that conversation. So the idea that you now go, well, Solo's group sucks, they're not the bloodline. It's like the bloodline's the greatest group of all time, arguably. So that comparison becomes completely unfair. You know, I hope that this is a separate group that builds on their own. Because I think there's a lot of potential there with all these guys. I think Solo, there's a lot of potential. I think JC Mateo, there's a lot of potential. I think Tama Tonga, everything I've seen from Tama Tonga has been great. And Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, it's so fun that they're in WWE right now. But I think that it would help to get them separated away from all the bloodline stuff. Guys, we'll get right back to it. But in this world that we live in, being paranoid stinks. I can't stand it, but I have to be paranoid. Because if I'm not paranoid, then I find myself in a rush. And if I'm in a rush, I'm going to get scammed. These scams are happening all the time. Sometimes you get scammed in the middle of the afternoon and you don't realize you've been scammed until you're laying down, head on the pillow, eyes are shut, and then they burst open. And you're like, oh my God, that thing was a scam, that phone call today, whatever it was. And maybe it's too late. Well, I've got good news. When you get the Cash App card, not only do you get access to a ton of perks and benefits, like exclusive access to early nationwide concert pre-sales or discounts on popular brands, but you also have extra security with the power to instantly lock or unlock your card right from your phone in just one tap. And for a limited time, new Cash App customers can earn $10 if they use code SECURE10 in their profile at sign up and send $5 to a friend within 14 days. Terms apply. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partner. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Discounts provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. I will tell you, when we talk about turns and we talk about Jey Uso's turn and the fact that I do not think the Jey Uso turn is happening. That's my thing right now. For me, no turn for Jey Uso. The Randy Orton turn, that's the turn that's happening. And I almost feel like the Jey Uso turn is the red herring, so you're looking over here and don't pay attention to the obvious thing. That Cody is in a lot of trouble. Paul Heyman went from spoilers to prophecies on SmackDown. Paul Heyman introduced himself as the Oracle and kind of in this opening segment on SmackDown explained why this is never going to work with Cody and Randy. Now, listen, every scenario that Paul Heyman set up revolved around Cody and Randy Orton losing, which I don't think is a fair thing to do to Cody and Randy, because if they win, then they'll be okay. But not everybody's going to win every single time, okay? And he set up these scenarios where long-term Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton just aren't going to work as a team. And even though they were all like specific to the vision winning, it still had this feel of like, I felt like as an audience member who's watching on television that you got this feeling of you're saying the quiet part loud. You know, you got this feeling of, well, usually when a heel is trying to create division in a team, you hope that it's like, no. They're just playing mind games. It's the psychological trap. But in reality, I was like, yeah, Paul's right. Randy and Cody can't coexist. Randy and Cody, I don't care how good of friends they are, they want the same thing too badly. And when Paul Heyman is just putting it all out there, being like, we're not afraid of you guys because you guys can't work as a team. My guys can. You guys, it's never going to work. Tonight it might work, but long term, this ain't built to last. And there's no way, as a member of the audience, that you're not watching that going, Paul's right. At the end of the night, the referee hands Cody Rhodes his WWE championship back, and Cody Rhodes is holding it in his hand, and Randy Orton is locked on it. While we're telling this story that is building to Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel, Randy is still staring at that WWE championship. I think for me, the downfall of Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes is going to be poetic. It's going to be epic. It's going to be tremendous, even. I think, as much as the Seth Rollins story with Cody is great, as much as the Roman Reigns Cody Rhodes story is like forever, I think this Randy Cody story could be one for the ages. And I think it's building and building and building right under our noses. I am very hopeful that Randy and Cody stay together for like at least the rest of the year. I wouldn't even mind if Randy and Cody were on the same team for War Games. I don't know if you're going to need Cody defending the title at War Games, at Survivor Series, like have the War Games match and a Cody title defense. But with 2 War Games matches on that show, you could do like women's War Games match and then Cody defends the title and then men's War Games match. But I feel like you've got the device. You might as well put Cody and Randy on that War Games team together. Because like I said, I don't want this thing to dissolve until the end. I feel like Cody and Randy, you take this to WrestleMania. And there's a lot that you could do with Cody at WrestleMania. I could be wrong about the Jey Uso thing, and you could do Cody and Jey at WrestleMania. You can do Cody and CM Punk at WrestleMania. You could easily, and this may be the move to do, because I can't think of a bigger match, you can do Cody and Roman Reigns one more time at WrestleMania. But you know what else you could do in Vegas? You could do Cody and Seth again, somehow. But Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania would be absolutely massive. And it would be massive because it would be the first time it's happening for Cody's WWE Championship. And that, to me, is the crux of this whole thing. Cody must never give Randy Orton a title shot. Don't give Randy Orton a title shot. And I shouldn't even be saying this stuff out loud, because when I say it out loud, I feel like it goes into the universe and it can go wrong. On SmackDown, when Miz and Melo split, when Melo said we're done, and Miz went and gave Melo a skull-crushing finale and ruined his chance at the United States Championship, I said no, because I had the whole scenario planned out where Melo and Miz wouldn't split up until John Cena's Boston Raw, until next month. And you could have it revolve around Melo and John Cena. I had a whole beautiful thing planned out. I said it out loud, and what happens? It maybe gets spoiled on SmackDown. I'm still going to try to figure out a way to fantasy book myself back into having that match happen because I love it too much. But I love this even more. Randy must never get a shot at Cody's championship, because Randy never getting a shot at Cody's championship is what makes Randy go nuts. It's what makes Randy become the Viper again. It's what brings Randy back to 2009. Randy realizing that he's not getting a shot at Cody's title unless he stabs him in the back. Because Cody will give his friend Kevin Owens a shot, and Cody will give this person a shot and that person a shot. But no matter how many times Randy has been caught oogling Cody's WWE Championship, staring that belt down, staring laser beams into that title, Cody never gives him a title match. I mean, I've said it before. I don't think I've gone over it on the podcast. It's Andre Hogan. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant was not only a perfect match, it was the perfect WrestleMania main event. It is the WrestleMania main event that all WrestleMania main events are compared to. Like, that is the definition of the marquee WrestleMania main event. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. How do we get whatever it is, 80,000, 90,000, 70,000, depending on who you ask? How do we fill up the Pontiac Silverdome? You just let them know. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. On the marquee, it's great. But what made the story so great, what made the story so fulfilling, was that Andre was justified in his heel turn. You didn't have to like it. You didn't have to agree with his approach. You didn't have to agree with the way he was conducting himself. But he was justified in his heel turn. And they had planted seeds for years building to WrestleMania 3. You could go back to, WrestleMania 3 is what, 88? Right? You could, or 87. WrestleMania 1's, I guess, 85, 86, 87 is WrestleMania 3. You can go back to 85, 84 and find these little instances of Hogan and Andre. Andre being there to celebrate with Hogan the night in January that Hulk Hogan won the WWE Championship from the Iron Sheik. All these little tiny instances that happened. And Hogan never giving Andre a shot at the championship. So now that all this stuff has happened, you play it out. Cody has been champion, what? A combined year and August, September, October, a year and 3 months combined. By the time we get to next year's WrestleMania, it'll be, a year and 9 months. And never gave Randy a title shot? Never let the fans have that match? Never let Randy have that opportunity? Well, clearly, Randy needs to change everything. Randy isn't wrong. You have years. You have literal years of tape to look back on when this story is told between Randy and Cody. And it's going to be epic if you do it exactly this way. If Randy realizes that he's never gotten that shot. And I don't know if Randy wins the Royal Rumble, or you know what? Randy goes into the Elimination Chamber, but maybe he turns on Cody before he goes into the chamber. Because the turn is important. And you don't want the turn to be exactly like John Cena's turn. Maybe you have Randy turn before the Rumble, and then he wins the Rumble. And maybe he promises that Cody's not going to make it to WrestleMania. Randy has to go full evil on this. Maybe you figure out a way. Maybe you don't do it. Maybe you have a scenario where it's like, you know what I wouldn't mind? I wouldn't mind, like, Roman Reigns, somebody else wins the Royal Rumble, right? They're going to face the World Heavyweight Champion. But there's some kind of chicanery. We need to figure out who the World Heavyweight Champion is. So this year, and they've done it before, the Elimination Chamber is going to be to determine who the World Heavyweight Champion is. Right? So we don't even have a match to determine who's facing Cody Rhodes. Instead, you do this old school. This is built on a personal rivalry. Randy just turns on Cody. And then Cody is the one who insists on making the match official. Cody goes to Nick Aldis and we build Randy versus Cody separate of all these match stipulations. Winner of Royal Rumble faces the World Heavyweight Champion. Winner of Elimination Chamber is the World Heavyweight Champion. So the Rumble and the Elimination Chamber all revolve around the other main event for WrestleMania. But Cody versus Randy doesn't need any of it. Maybe even Randy goes into the Royal Rumble going like, Cody, you better watch out. I'm going to come for you. And then when he gets eliminated, that's when he gets frustrated. That's when he gets mad. Because maybe he realizes that the Royal Rumble was the only way I'm getting a shot at Cody Rhodes because he's not going to give me one. And losing the Royal Rumble is what causes him to snap. You know, I mean, I love it. And by the way, I also want to say that everything that Paul Heyman said about Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes also applies to Paul Heyman's guys. I think eventually the present is going to be the future. We keep talking about the future. Braun Breaker has the future written on his singlet. Eventually it's going to be the future. And Seth Rollins is not going to want to acknowledge when the future has arrived. You know, I think within the next 365 days, it's going to be the future. Braun Breaker is going to step up to get his spot, and I don't think Seth Rollins is going to be ready to step aside. And what does Paul Heyman do then? You know, I think part of me loves the idea of a Braun Breaker, Paul Heyman tandem because it brings me back to the early days of Brock Lesnar, quite honestly. But let's say the WrestleMania match is Braun Breaker versus Brock Lesnar. And I personally love that idea because the idea of John Cena never gets his victory back against Brock Lesnar. And Braun Breaker doesn't get a match with John Cena, but Braun Breaker gets to go and beat Brock Lesnar. Well, then that's how that energy gets passed through. He gets the energy of John Cena and Brock Lesnar. But once Braun Breaker beats Brock Lesnar, are you really sitting there and going, one day, kid, this will all be yours? Or is it his time? And if it is his time, is Paul Heyman ready to admit that and pull the trigger? Or is it going to be a scenario where Bronson Reed doesn't like it, and it's Seth and Bronson and Heyman trying to stop Braun Breaker, and Braun Breaker is this babyface? Either way, the same energy that is going on with Cody and Randy is the same energy that's going on between Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins. And I hope, man, I would love to see it. I would love to see it on like an Unreal or something. I hope that like there's some kind of like, you know, boardroom meeting with the whiteboards out and everything where all the writers are getting together and they're going, what are we focusing on in 2026? Because I think 2025 was a lot of John Cena's final run that didn't end up going as planned, was a lot of this, was a lot of that. It's like, okay, with the guys that we have, what is 2026? What's the story of 2026 going to be? And I think that's where you map out Jey Uso. I think that's where you map out Roman Reigns. I think that's where you map out Cody and Randy. I think that's where you map out Braun Breaker and breaking, pun intended, away from the vision. I think all of that is part of this large-scale plan for 2026. And you know what? Feeling the way I feel right now, I think that come the end of the year, I'm going to have a hell of a here's what I'd like to see in 2026 podcast. There's so many end of year projects, by the way, that I'm kind of like putting together and working on right now that I can't wait. I'm already starting like the writing process behind all of it. I think December is going to be a good month for Notsam Wrestling and Podcast. I also want to thank you guys for getting us to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. YouTube.com/Notsam Wrestling. If you haven't joined the party yet, join the party. But we did get to 100,000 subscribers last week, and I really, really appreciate it. Before we get to emails, now next week, we're going to, or this week, later this week, I'm sure we'll have a video about whatever happens at NXT versus TNA Showdown. post a video about that, but we'll be talking about that on the SiriusXM show. So I'll surely post a video about that on either Wednesday or Thursday. And then I will also surely have a Crown Jewel preview show, as well as a Crown Jewel emergency podcast right after the show. So all of that coming. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, on youtube.com/Notsam Wrestling. Make sure you're subscribed across all audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, everywhere else. I do want to talk before we get to emails about Andrade returning to AEW, because I think Andrade returning to AEW is a big, big deal for a couple of reasons. One, I think it just as far as this story goes, I think it was very well executed. Andrade coming in, the lights going out. I think John Pollock on Post Wrestling might have been the one that I was very amused by, who pointed out that Excalibur never considers that the lights going out may be a narrative device. He always thinks the lights going out are a technical issue, which is a hilarious observation and true. But the lights go out, the lights come back on. Andrade is in the ring. Major surprise. Nobody saw it coming. Takes out Kenny Omega. Don Callis enters the ring, and Andrade is a part of the Callis family. So a couple of things there. Number one, huge spot for Andrade to come back in. Puts him in the position of a top guy already. And also qualifies him as a heel right away, because you have him attacking Kenny Omega and Kenny going down, and you have him joining Don Callis. And it wasn't like he threw the first hit and the rest of the family had to come in. It was like, no, Andrade took out Kenny Omega. And I think that I am one of the people who have been waiting for a long time to see Andrade actually be in that main event spot that I've thought he could be in for a long time, since NXT. He had that run as NXT champion, and he was one of those guys that you were like, I can't wait for him to get to the main roster. But in none of his WWE or AEW runs has he gotten to the place that at that point I felt like he could get to. And by the way, was a pillar of the pandemic era. Andrade and Zelina and all of that was like, they would take up segment after segment of television at a time in WWE where it was difficult filling those segments of television. That's another podcast we should do one day. The heroes of the pandemic era for the WWE on screen. But I think Andrade coming in and joining the Callis family and attacking Kenny Omega is like instantly, okay, I see what he's doing. This is a big, he's going to be a big deal for the AEW stories going further. And by the way, like, the Callis family is ridiculously large now. It's far larger than it need to be and impossible to keep track of. But when you look at that roster, and they took a photo all together and it was preposterous. But I think that that's because they're going to be reorganizing members, right? And I look at it and I see Takeshita as somebody that is going to be out of this family very, very quickly and is going to be a babyface very, very quickly. I see Kyle Fletcher as a guy who is going to be out of this family quickly and is going to be a babyface quickly. People already love him. Same with Takeshita. I think the fact that you have Okada already obviously lined up to be the heel that is there, facing Takeshita, I think is massive for Takeshita. But I also think that Andrade comes in and fits one of those top heel spots. The idea of having Okada and Andrade, and no offense to anybody else in the group, but having Okada and Andrade and positioning them as your top two guys in this faction are a great move. And you've now got built-in opponents for Fletcher and for Takeshita when they leave the group. Both Okada and Andrade are built-in opponents for them when they leave the group, and it allows them to then go on to do other stuff on the roster. So I think that that's good. Now, the other reason that I think that this is significant is I think that it's huge to see an AEW guy, like this, to see Andrade go back to AEW. He's the first guy since AEW popped up to go from WWE to AEW, back to WWE, back to AEW. I think that one of the things about having two different mainstream American pro wrestling organizations is the unpredictability of it all, watching superstars go spot to spot and seeing who prospers where. And the idea that people could leave and come back, to me, is extraordinarily compelling. And now it makes me think of like the Jericho thing a lot differently. Right now that people are kind of going here, going there, going here, going there. I think that with Chris Jericho's contract apparently coming up and everybody talking about where does Chris Jericho end up in 2026. A couple of weeks ago, I was like, I kind of have my money on WWE. Now, because everybody's money is on WWE, I could easily see him going back to AEW. And just because it comes across as a victory for AEW, like throwing a bunch of money at him and having come back, it makes things more unpredictable. And I think that that's a good thing for wrestling fans. So I thought it was very significant and massive. If you have emails for us, if you have thoughts on what we've been talking about today or anything else across the wrestling world, notsamwrestling@gmail.com is my email address. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com. By the way, I always have episodes of like Monday Night Raw on Netflix going on one of the TVs in the background here in the Not Sam studio when I'm recording this podcast. And I have on the episode of Monday Night Raw from September 13th, 1993. And September 13th, 1993 is an important day in pro wrestling history because it is the day that Doink the Clown turned babyface. Doink the Clown turned babyface by throwing a bucket of water all over Bobby the Brain Heenan. And it was kind of the beginning of the end of Doink the Clown because Doink would turn babyface and within 2 months, 6 weeks, Matt Bourne would be out of WWE and Doink would never be the same again. So I was almost kind of depressed watching Doink the Clown hit Bobby the Brain Heenan with that bucket of water because I said, that's the end of my Doink. That's the end of my Doink's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Which version of Doink? Probably end of 92, showing up on Superstars in the audience until maybe September 13th, 1993. Maybe that's the end. Maybe I just put a date on it for the first time. That's wild. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com is the email address. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com. Let's go to Lehman, who writes in, Sam, do you think when Roman realized Jey is the one, he'll say, you're the man now, dog? I hope so. I hope so. Instead of calling him the big dog or anything like that, I hope that that happens. I hope that Jey goes against Roman's wishes. Roman realizes it's the right thing to do. And then much like Sean Connery in Finding Forrester, I believe is the movie, he says, you're the man now, dog. Good question. Hamza writes in, Sam, I also think Seth needs to win at Crown Jewel. I don't think Seth needs to win at Crown Jewel. I think Seth should win and will win at Crown Jewel for the purpose of the story. But to say, again, needs to win is a phrase that is used too often when we analyze professional wrestling. I don't think Braun Breaker can be involved. I think they'll be doing something with Roman, Jimmy, and Jey anyway. I believe the watch is very important. How would you feel if Seth beat Cody but used the watch like brass knuckles to knock him out? I think it would be very Cody Rhodes to lose because of the gift he gave to somebody he thought was a friend. You know, I think it's possible. It's kind of the same thing that John Cena did by putting Cody's Rolex on his fist. You know, but that was the Dusty Rolex, I believe. I would like to see Seth beat Cody clean. Or as clean as you can get. Maybe the brass knuckles is the thing. However Seth beats Cody, I would like to see him leave the Rolex behind after he beats Cody. I think that could be cool. Mark from Tarzana writes in, he hits me with one of these. 5, 2! I hope I made the cutoff and you're doing your broadcast, your podcast between the Jets and Giants games. That's very smart. I have a question that's been rattling around in my head for a while now. This might be a better question for the Busted Open guys, but I wanted to get your fan perspective on it. Well, I hope that this isn't insulting, that you wanted their perspective. When Julia, Stephanie, Penta, and Jordan came to the WWE, they talked in interviews about adapting to the WWE style. Julia said she increased her cardio training when she came over. So I'm curious how the styles vary between New Japan Strong style, the Lucha style, AEW, and WWE. As always, I appreciate and acknowledge you, my PTC, Podcast Tribal Cheif. For me, I think, New Japan Strong style, I think you look at matches, right? I think New Japan Strong style is more that, like, the pinnacle of it is like a Kenny Okada type of match where you're going to go long matches and you're going to hit hard, right? And it's like, and you're exhausting your audience, but in the best way possible. The story is in the fight between two men. It's not superheroes. It's the fight between two men or two women that are leaving absolutely everything behind in the ring. Lucha style, I think, is far more storytelling. I think Lucha style might be the most storytelling style of all styles, where almost to the point where you're not 100% sure what you're watching if you're not familiar with how you're watching it. But I think it is a far more like cooperative looking style, but also a style that encompasses, I think, a lot more than many realize. I think that, like, a lot more character work than a lot of people realize. There's a cultural depth to it that I think you have to take into consideration as well, but also all the aerial stuff and all that stuff. I think AEW is we're putting on matches for people who love wrestling matches. And I think WWE is, everything WWE does is based in spectacle. Everything WWE does is based in sizzle. And I say that in a good way. I love sizzle. But I think that everything WWE does is presentation. And look at this. I kind of think, and I could get more in depth, but I hope that answers your question. Michael writes in, I acknowledge you in my OPTC because you're all gas, no breaks with it. Can I get a 5, 2? Do you enjoy the champion versus champion crown jewel match, or does it seem too cumbersome that every year we have this match instead of a regular championship match? It depends on the match. I'm not going to cast out any specific match and call it cumbersome just because that'd be like, oh, I'm so tired of the Money in the Bank ladder matches because it could be a championship match, and now why do we have to cash in? It depends on the story that you're telling around the match. I think the fact that we can get to a Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins match and put story behind it makes it so that wouldn't have worked without a champion versus champion stip. So I think that you can do it in a way that's cumbersome, or you can do it in a way that leads you to a great story that you wouldn't have otherwise had. Also, do you think the War Games match would benefit by adding in the Survivor Series elimination style to it? No. It would just be the Elimination Chamber. If so, would the elimination start right away, or everybody has gotten into the match? No, the War Games match, first of all, they've already changed the War Games match. The original traditional War Games match doesn't even have pins in it. It's submission only. But no, if you're doing elimination style, you might as well just do an elimination chamber. You already had that, especially if you're doing it one by one. It's just an elimination chamber with teams, I guess. But no, also, like, the beauty of the War Games match is that not everybody has to get beat. That's why it can be so helpful. If you do it elimination style, everybody in that cage has to get beat, and it's a cage match. So it makes it even more difficult to credibly, to beat people without having them lose their credibility. So no, I think that actually would be a deterrent and defeat the purpose of War Games. Phil writes in, it's Saturday night in the UK, so it's watching Friday Night SmackDown time, albeit with adult beverages again. So who knows if this makes sense? Okay, let's find out. So far, I'm so happy to finally see the Blue Thunder Bomb actually being used for a pin. I think that's twice that it's been used for a pin now. Long may it continue to be a very cool move. Also, the Jacob Fatu vignette was awesome. Yada Ramin, yes, I do. Again, no one knows if okay, this feels like you're just, I'm venting to me, and that's not what I'm here for. You can get a therapist. Aaron writes in, I think John Cena's last match will be one-on-one with Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship, and here's why. Although they haven't crossed paths much this year, I believe John Cena and Seth Rollins have to collide when it comes to their impact on the WWE as a whole right now. John Cena has been wrapping up his storied career this year, while Seth Rollins has been establishing a clear vision for the future of the industry. Cena says he wants to leave the business better than he found it, but Seth Rollins knows the business can and will thrive without John Cena. What better way for Cena to go out than facing the leader of the future of the industry for the World Heavyweight Championship? The last real champion has one more chance to leave the industry better than he found it by dethroning the visionary, and on the flip side, Seth Rollins has a chance to send the greatest of all time packing, proving his vision for the future is now. Aaron, it's, you use a lot of pretty words, and it's said very well, and it's written very well. Cena is a babyface now, right? What made John Cena a heel was winning the championship and retiring as champion. So how can you tell me that John Cena is a babyface and now his mission is to win the World Heavyweight Champion and retire as champion? How does that make any sense? I'm not saying it won't happen, but you're going to have to do a better job than that explaining it to me, because that is literally what he wanted to do as a heel. He told me before that would ruin wrestling, that there would be no true World Heavyweight Champion then, because he's leaving. So if you're telling me in order to be the hero of wrestling, he's going to do the same thing he said he would do to ruin wrestling, I can't buy it. It doesn't make any sense. Yoram from Chile writes in. That's amazing. Greetings, my OPTC. Greetings to you, Yoram. Or Joram. I would like to share my thoughts on the parallels of two stories. I love this. On one hand, we have Io Sky and a yeeting Jey Uso, being two former babyface world champions who remain being very friendly and supportive of the locker room after losing their titles, but have been unable to regain the championship. On the other hand, current Jey and Asuka, who have both realized that to be longtime champions, you have to be merciless, can't have any friends, and can't trust anybody in the locker room besides family. I love it. Same story being told with different characters and different points of view. Both great, though. I would agree with that. It's very interesting, the parallels between what Asuka's doing with Kyrie and Io and Jay's idea that he got from Roman in the Bloodline. 100% right on. P.S. I hope Crown Jewel ends with an RKO to Rhodes. I do not. I don't think it's time yet. I do not think it's time yet. Okay, last email. Ollie writes in, Sam, a random thought I was having while watching SmackDown. I'm not sure if it's been discussed, but if AJ Styles wanted to have his last match with Samoa Joe, I think it could happen if it took place in TNA. Come on, dude. This isn't going to be the last email. It would be a sign of good faith from both AEW and WWE. We're not, and even though TNA partners with more often with WWE, this match would only have TNA profit, and both companies can either just run individual promos or maybe do a film promo for WWE and AEW. Dude, what are you talking about? Both men have earned the right to a fair fight. That match would rock. Also excited for Samoa Joe versus Hangman and Cena versus Styles. Why would AEW allow somebody that they're positioning as a world title contender to go to TNA, who is not, they do not, although TNA partners more often with WWE, they are in a working relationship with WWE. They are currently actively business partners with WWE, not AEW. Why would AEW send one of their top talents to TNA to fight AJ Styles? And why would either company allow their guy to lose? Why would AEW be okay with AJ Styles beating their guy? And why would WWE be okay with their guy losing to an AEW guy? TNA would benefit from this, but only TNA. This is the last email. Hey, Sam. Actually, no. This is Okay. Let's go to Ryan. I acknowledge you, my OPTC. Okay. Two superstars that are living through the storyline of having the world championship evade them amidst their best efforts are Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. If either of these characters were to win a championship, they would need to have a real run with the title for it to be fulfilling. Correct. I would agree with you. However, is there any reasonable scenario with all the stories going on in WWE right now that either of these two could win the title anytime soon or go on a run? It feels like these two will not be accomplishing their goals in the near future. Well, I think absolutely. It's October, okay? War Games is in 5-6 weeks. After that, we're headed to the Royal Rumble. We're headed to WrestleMania season. I mean, if Drew McIntyre were to beat John Cena, wouldn't you say that a world title match would probably be in his future? CM Punk couldn't main event WrestleMania this year again? CM Punk or Drew McIntyre couldn't win the Royal Rumble or the Elimination Chamber? I absolutely think that there's plenty of runway for either of those two guys to win the championship. It just depends on what story is being told. Right now, that's not the story being told. But CM Punk is in an active rivalry with Seth Rollins. Actively. I don't know what he's going to say on Raw, but CM Punk could beat Seth Rollins. They could just announce CM Punk versus Seth Rollins is going to happen at the Survivor Series outside of War Games, and CM Punk wins the title. That could happen immediately. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, of course. It's right there. It's right in front of you. Do I think it's going to happen right away? No. But that's not to say it won't happen. I appreciate all you guys sending your emails in. I appreciate all you guys listening, watching, keeping everything going very strong here for the Not Sam brand. Don't forget to listen on Sirius every day, Monday through Thursday, 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to this here podcast, audio and video, and we'll see you again very, very soon for more Not Sam Wrestling.